everyone. Thanks for tuning into my channel. I'm Kidest, and this is where I share tips, insights, guidance on expanding your consciousness, attracting and manifesting the things that you want, developing yourself, growing, improving, and really creating the life experience that you truly desire to experience. And in this video, I want to touch on an insight that occurred to me. I'm currently rereading Shawn Achor's The Happiness Advantage. It's one of those books that I reference periodically because it's got quite a bit of well-researched information, and those are the kinds of books I love to read. I love science-based books that highlight and go into the latest research findings on optimal human performance, self-growth, mindset, and all that good stuff. And in this book, how he describes some of what, research in certain fields within psychology look at is looking at how individuals go about increasing their life satisfaction or raising their happiness baseline. And it occurred to me that, some of the things being looked at scientifically within the field of psychology are comparable to some of the conversations you find in the metaphysical, alternative medicine, and spirituality disciplines. Now, being someone who's explored a wide array of topics, I have maps and internal representations that sort of marry different disciplines together. And what occurred to me when I read that specific framing, raising your happiness baseline, which is something that you can do in a tangible way. If we look at, what happens to you biologically, neurologically, when you start taking on practices that increase your satisfaction with life, that increase your felt sense of happiness, which is, a range of different positive emotions, those measurable changes do raise or increase your default mood, your default sort of emotional expressions and experiences. And one of the things that I've talked about in psychology or in my in my posts here, one of the things that I've talked about in my post is you know, the idea of raising your vibration, raising your sort of vibrational frequency to reflect more empowerment, to reflect, more positivity, more positive energy and the like. And although the language is different and although the measurement is different, typically in metaphysics and spirituality, the conversations around your energy, your consciousness, and at this point in, sort of human experience, there aren't tools and devices you can bring home to measure your vibration, if you will. You can't step on a scale and get a readout of your vibrational frequency, that shows you where you're vibing in that given moment. So, although we don't have the instrumentation yet, the expression and experience is the same as what's talked about as optimal performance or high performance or, increased life satisfaction in different disciplines. So I think it's really useful to make use of a broad range of disciplines to build your map so that, you are, pursuing your interests, pursuing your intentions to, you know, experience and express your highest potential in whatever way you frame it. I know most of my audience, my subscribers, my readers are likely in that range of understanding both the sort of metaphysics and spiritual side of things as well as the sort of psychological and scientific side of things. So I find great value in finding explanations that give a tangibility to these concepts of consciousness and vibration, which at the moment we don't have ways of quantifying and metric terms what we mean by these concepts. Now, I talk a lot about, higher dimensional experiences and what have you, and spiritual growth. The those experiences don't have the same objective measurement you can bring to them outside of your subjective experience, outside of the sort of rhetorical or an anecdotal explanations and descriptions you may find at this time. Like we haven't mapped the quantum or higher dimensional domain in a way that we can tangibly say this is what it is. And that may stay that way. It may be that these higher dimensional domains of experience and self-understanding and self-awareness may remain that way. That may be just how they're meant to be. But regardless, there is tangible, objective insights and understandings and even sort of maps and quantifiable tools and resources you can make use of to make sense of or to reflect those things that you may be pursuing in that sort of spiritual and metaphysical territory of experience. So raising your happiness baseline or increasing your life satisfaction are some of the ways in which psychology terms what you might hear as being, raising your vibration or expanding your consciousness in other territories. Now, gratefully, wonderfully, things like mindfulness and meditation have begun to gain sort of objective measurements and objective explorations. There are fMRI snapshots of what happens to a meditator's brain. There's increased understanding in how mindfulness and meditation practices create neurological changes. They change your neurological landscape and which regions of the brain are changed by those kinds of practices. So there is an increasing amount of objective data you can reference and some of the things that used to be sort of seen as a spiritual and alternative medicine type of explorations. So the the gist and the takeaway really that I was inspired to share here is to explore other disciplines to give yourself that quantifiable experience of what's being talked about. You can raise your vibration. You can, raise your happiness baseline by taking on some of the practices that I've talked about right here on my channel and my blog posts and my books. I recently did the neuroscience of gratitude post, and in that, I talked about all of the benefits you get from a very simple practice of 5 to 10 minutes a day that will raise your vibration, or put another way, that will raise your happiness baseline. So it's really useful to sort of broaden your map so that you can give yourself, you know, a, a grounded understanding of the changes that you're experiencing. Anytime you do the work of spiritual growth, personal growth, self-improvement, you are experiencing that shift in perspective. You are experiencing that change in consciousness. You are experiencing that change in vibration. And all of those changes are reflected in your biochemistry, in your neural landscape, in your sort of improved default physiological state. So even if we're exploring abstract ideas or seemingly abstract ideas at this moment in time, there is a high likelihood that there is a quantifiable representation of them being studied in another discipline. So I was delighted by sort of making that connection, although I had, read the book before. And I'm talking about Shawn Achor's The Happiness Advantage, just to mention it again, if you're interested in understanding the science of happiness, that's a good book to check out. Although I'd read it before, I hadn't quite made that connection in language. Increasing your life satisfaction or raising your happiness baseline is speaking to what I talk about in other areas as raising your vibration or expanding your consciousness. Because what happens when you become more sort of embodied in positive states is you do sort of expand your peripheral awareness, if you will. You do have a shift in consciousness. You do have a broadened perspective that starts to emerge. So I love seeing those linkages between, science and spirituality. I think the more bridges there are to connect these seemingly distinct disciplines, the more grounded we can become in our self-explorations and in our consciousness expansion. So I wanted to share that tidbit. I read quite a lot of books, and anytime I find an insight of that nature that links things for me, I'm quite delighted by that experience. So I wanted to share that, and stay tuned right here for more tips, insights, guidance on consciousness expansion. And of course, there are my books and courses and my coaching practice if you're interested in taking your personal development, self-growth, spiritual growth to that next satisfying level that's within reach. If you enjoyed this tip on deliberate creation, personal development, consciousness evolution, be sure to visit my website for books, courses, and more to help you in your personal development and personal transformation journey.